Hello, welcome to my race report for the GRANGUANCHE Road AUDAX event over in the Canary Islands. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with the GRANGUANCHE, it is an event which takes place every January on the road at least. There is also a gravel event that takes place in March and a trail event later in the year. And essentially, it's a race across the islands of the Canaries. So it starts in Lanzarote. And as you can see on Ride with GPS here, I've got the routes set in for each of the islands. So starting in Lanzarote, then crossing Fuerteventura before a longer ferry across to Gran Canaria. Then there's another ferry across to Tenerife, and it finishes on El Gormaria, which is a very small island just off the coast of Tenerife. So essentially, even though it is technically a kind of an Audax, you're racing the ferries more than anything, more than the other competitors. So you're allowed to kind of draft, and we see a lot of really fast pacing early on, and then as the ride commences, people start to spread out, and if you miss a ferry by say 1 minute, it could be half an hour, or even 2 hours until the later ferries. So it's really important to focus on the ferries more than anything. So if you want to find more information, you go to grandguanche.com or GRANGUANCHE Route on Instagram. They've got some really good imagery here. These are from various events. That's the trail event in November. Or if you fancy doing it, but without the ultra racing side of things, they also do tours on the same route, the Outer Detours tours. And as it happens, I'm guiding the route starting on the 10th of March, and we'll take 8 days to do what most of the riders have probably done in 3 or 4 days. And we get to stay in 5-star hotels and really enjoy ourselves. So check out outerdetours.com if that's the kind of thing you think you might be interested in. So without further ado, let's dig into the event and see kind of what has happened as it's gone on. So start in at basically dawn, sunrise, and the town is in Orzola, so that's kind of the northeast of Lanzarote. And basically you're traversing the island, and as you can see here, there's a couple of climbs, sort of 5 or 6 miles climbs early on, but then it's kind of quite draggy and open. It can be fairly windy, and I think at the moment the winds are basically blowing the wrong way. Usually it'd be a tailwind, sort of the trade winds blowing from the kind of the north, or certainly the northeast. However, this time they're going the other way. So I think the riders got stuck into a fairly chunky headwind for the first couple of islands, and yeah, made the going quite tough. So we'll go on to the tracker, and we'll just replay it, see what happens. And as you can see, it's on Follow My Challenge. I don't always find this the easiest to use, and certainly on this first island, you're not really going to be able to see too much of what's going on because there's so many riders, and it's very hard to kind of distinguish who's where, and riders are riding in groups, which is allowed. So as you can see, total chaos. But loads of riders got to the first ferry, and the ferries run fairly regularly, kind of every half hour or so. So most riders at this stage manage to get across. Now, if we look at the leaderboard, I've basically just arranged it by finish time at the end of each island. The clock stops when you get to the ferry port. So you could be like an hour before the ferry, and if you get to the ferry port, the clock stops. So then you sort of continue on to the next island. So as you can see, all these riders, just about 4 hours to get across, within 5-10 minutes for the lead bunch. I suspect a lot of them may have been together, but the kind of the way that the trackers ping doesn't always, it's not always at the same time. But as you can see from some of the imagery, it's a lot of group riding, kind of quite deserty, and you see the volcanic kind of mountains in Tenerife, all pretty spectacular. It's a great place to ride a bike, as long as the wind isn't blowing too hard. So we've got a big group heading across onto Fuerteventura. As you can see, Fuerteventura is a little bit longer. I think it's actually the warmest and driest of the Canary Islands. And these headwinds were really kind of smashing the riders, and that tends to keep people together a bit more because of the slower pace, and you're allowed to ride in a group. So you can see things spreading out gradually, but there is still quite a lot of riders together at the front here, and Paul Voss was actually the first one to the ferry port. Now, there was actually a bit of drama at the ferry. So Paul Voss was the first rider to get there. He got on the first ferry, and then a couple of riders, Joachim and Kevin, I've only got a small phone snap of this, they arrived just as the ferry ramp was going up, so they missed out. So I think Paul was the first rider across. Everyone else ended up on the ferry behind. So let's have a little look at the timings for that, and we'll arrange it by segment time. So yeah, Paul Voss, 4 hours 34 minutes. Kevin and Jochen, these were the riders that missed the ferry by like a minute or so, 30 seconds, not even that. And you can see they both finished pretty much on 5 hours. I suspect they arrived together. And then there was a kind of a group in sort of around the next sort of half an hour. Plenty more riders turned up, so they would have all been on the same ferry as they crossed to the next island, which would be Tenerife. So let's go and have a look at Tenerife. Now, you may have spotted my obvious mistake there. It's not Tenerife, the next island. It's Gran Canaria. So, yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. But basically, Fuerteventura and Lanzarote are relatively flat. But when you get to Gran Canaria, you see it's starting to get a little hillier. Now, the profile doesn't exactly show it too much, but you're getting up to almost 5,000 meters at the top here. 5,000 feet, which is substantial. It's basically one long uphill, bit of a drag across top, and then one big downhill to the island. Now, what happened here was, if we go onto the race tracker, there you see Paul Voss, only one on the ferry, getting a nice head start, and then all these riders here in a big group ended up on the same ferry, and then Paul had a bit of a rest. So essentially, they all ended up starting at the same time. Now, a few riders pushed through the night to try and catch up again. So by the time they got up and over Gran Canaria and down to the ferry the next morning, a few riders were now back on Audax pace. But you can see a lot of people stopping overnight, and the field's really spreading out. Some riders, all the way across on Fuerteventura still. So this is where the event really kind of adds up, and it's like the accumulated fatigue, and you're never really recovering enough. Now, the classic. The classic images from these kind of events are the sleeping images. And it's a classic sleeping on a ferry. No beds on these ferries. They're only commuter ferries, so everyone's just asleep, spread all over the floor. I'm sure the ferry staff don't really appreciate it too much until they realise how much money the riders are spending at the little restaurants on each ferry. There was some drama. A lot of the put it this way, the ferry companies aren't always that accommodating for bike riders. So there'll be a fixed amount of spots on the ferry, say 15, 20 spots. And once they're sold out, they won't let any more bikes on, even though there's loads of room. So the local, quite a few of the locals, basically they let you put your bikes in the back of either their trucks or vans. So you can go on as a foot passenger, your bike can go on, and you can get on the ferry, and then you don't have to wait unnecessarily. It's a bit inflexible by the ferry companies. Bikes take up no room, and they should be encouraging bikes more than cars. But there we go, such is life. But the locals are very understanding and accommodating. So yeah, it just shows that human kindness tends to prevail in these kind of situations. So after Gran Canaria, as you can see, if we look here at the finish time, so Paul Voss, despite getting on the earlier ferry and getting kind of a bit of a jump into Gran Canaria, he finished at 3:30 in the morning. So I suspect he may have found somewhere to sleep, but the first ferry I think is 6 a.m. off the top of my head. So quite a few riders managed to ride through the night and catch up again. So despite being slower on the segment, they were still on the same ferry going across to Tenerife. So if we just replay that on the race tracker, you can see there's a big group of riders all on the same ferry. So essentially you kind of start again in Tenerife, and you're kind of, despite some riders having a smaller accumulated time, they are all still together and basically starting again. So it's a really interesting kind of it's a different way. It's not like a straightforward ultra race where everyone starts at the same time. It's a bit tactical. You're always racing the ferries, and basically the ferries are the main competition, to be honest. So yeah, once the riders get onto Tenerife, Tenerife, if you don't know, is basically a massive it's a volcano. LTD, it's like a 4,000 meter mountain. Again, everything created from like volcanic explosions. At the start, it's a really varied kind of interesting route. At the start, it's almost like jungle, quite humid. But then as you go around the island and higher up, you get into pine forests. and at the top it's quite open and barren. So if we have a look on the collection on Ride with GPS, you'll be able to see kind of the kind of basically elevation profiles, and it's basically a little bit of a loop at the start. There's an amazing climb up from the coast here, really sort of twisty, hairpinny, and then you're basically just going up and over the top on yeah, like it's just a long climb. Let's go on Google Map and we should be able to just get the little Google man and have a little look to see what it's like at the top there. So as you can see, when we drop the Google little pin on the top of LTD, you can see the kind of terrain. It's pretty spectacular. There's trees on certain side in the shade, but other bits it's a bit of a moonscape. And you pass the observatories at the top here. So the pine forests end and it opens out and it can be quite barren. So that's obviously a night photo. Let me see if I can find something a bit clearer. There we go. So you can see that's the road the riders be riding up, and you see LTD in the distance. So it's really spectacular. But even though it is fairly warm in the Canaries, you can get caught out. I've been caught in snow up there. I went up there training once, and yeah, and it snowed for the best part of a week. And because you're at 2,500 meters, it can indeed get quite cold. So yeah, let's have a little look at the tracker again. And as you can see, things are really starting to kind of split out now. So Philippe Bichette, he's sort of took the lead ahead of Paul Voss, Joachim Burmer, and a group of riders in here that were all kind of at a very similar pace. And as you can see, 4 riders made the final island ahead of the others. So let's just go across to the end of Tenerife, see what time everyone finished. So Philippe finished first, getting across just about before 2 o'clock. Joachim Boehringer, so he was one of the riders that got stuck on the ferry earlier on. Paul Voss, Roman Naguilera, Kevin Boschardin, and Julie von Groningen, first woman as well, hot on the heels of the guys, along with Linda Farksadi. So Linda and Philippe, they're together, and they were riding in Japan. So I spent a bit of time riding with them. They're both super strong, so it's great to see them both up there, getting right ahead of the race. So if I've got some images of the start. So essentially, the Audax pace is the fastest sort of pace you can do, set by the organisers. So we had our 5 riders. It's a bit of an awful photo, to be honest, but they made the ferry onto La Gomera together. So that's Philippe, Joachim, Paul, Roman, and Kevin. So they set off then on the final loop. So essentially now you've beaten the ferries. They're all together. They're on La Gomera. So it's kind of like a mano a mano race, and again another volcano, straight up, round the top, back down again. 60 miles, 100k, just over 9,000 feet of climbing. So it's no easy ride, to say the least. And at the end of all of it, it was Paul Voss who came home first. So as you can see, they all came on together, blasted around the island. And I think they started straight away. So a lot of them, they started at 4 p.m. as you can see on the race clock here. So they would have done a lot of it in the dark, which is probably a shame. But, you know, they're kind of racing. So that's that. But Paul obviously had some better sleeps earlier on. He got that earlier ferry, so he would have been able to rest, recover. And that, it all adds up. It's an attritional thing. So at the end of it, we had, find our final times. So Paul Voss was the fastest rider. Philippe was second. Kevin, Roman, Jochen bringing up top 5. Julie was the first woman ahead of Linda Farkazi. And then Rachel Nolan came in third. So yeah, you can see a real good mix of women in the top 10 there. Now, the event is still going on at the moment. So there's still plenty of riders out there on the road. So head over to the tracker on the GRANGUANCHE.com website, see what's going on, follow the Instagram, and see what everyone who's going to be out there for a few more days is doing. So I hope that was kind of a useful report. It's a bit of a hard one to bring to you. It's not quite as straightforward as just a standard race, so hopefully it made some sense. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff. Next up for me, coverage-wise and racing-wise, is the Atlas Mountain Race. I won't be able to do daily live coverage for the Atlas Mountain Race for the obvious reasons that I'll be racing it. But I'll do some race previews and I'll bring you a load of content once I'm back from Morocco after the race. So thanks for watching and see you again soon.